So it gives me very great pleasure to welcome SJ, who is our Generous Giving Advisor. Thank you, SJ.
Good morning. It's great to be here at my first synod, and it's wonderful to be focusing on celebration this morning. And there's certainly no shortage of stories of generosity to add to the good news stories that we've already heard. I will confess, though, that when I started to think about what to say during this slot, there was that fleeting anxious thought, what if there is not enough? A bit like the worry that I'm sure many of us in the room are familiar with when tasked with finding people to fill a rota, volunteers to make a project happen, or an amount of money that is required. And I wasn't there to experience how it felt when faced with a crowd of thousands with only a few loaves of bread and some fish to feed them all, but I imagine the thought pattern was fairly similar. What if there is not enough? Well, spoiler alert, in that particular situation, God delivered. The result was abundance, an outpouring of generosity. Similarly, when I started to ask for good news stories of generosity, I received so many emails, so much more than I needed. Even as I wrote this talk, the emails came pinging in with more responses. The key thing was that I needed to ask the question in order to get what I needed. And for some reason, we often find that hard to do. Ask, seek, and knock will be well known to many of us from the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. They are verses that encourage us to persist in prayer, to be open about what we need, and to gratefully receive what we are given in response. They are verses that also remind us, if we need something, then we have to let people know. Ask, and it will be given to you. And on that note, I'm really pleased to introduce Kathy Collins, Treasurer and Church Warden of St Peter and St Paul Church in Borden, who is here to share her experience of what happens when you ask. Kathy, welcome.
Good morning. This is my first time here as well. So I'm here to talk about the grubby subject of money. As the treasurer, I think about it quite a bit. In the summer of 2021, with the blessing of our priest, Father Robert Lane, we created a new fund called the Widow's Mite Fund. The hope of this new fund was to try to protect Borden Church for the future by helping Borden Church to meet its financial obligations. So far, the Widow's Mite Fund has been moderately successful. We've increased the number of regular givers by 100%, from 40 to 80. Our annual planned giving income has increased by 30%. And during 2021, we received donations of £17,000 that has helped us to clear our arrears for 2020 and to pay the parish share in full for 2021. It's very important to the PCC that the parish share is paid in full. This is the first time for many years that I can remember that our annual income is actually increasing and not decreasing. So we begin the new financial year of 2022 debt-free and with a renewed sense of optimism, although we are not yet financially in the clear, but we will be. So where did this all start, I hear you ask? Well, at the beginning of 2021, I became treasurer. The first thing I did was try to figure out how to be a treasurer and to make an assessment of our overall financial health. I prepared a budget. It was not good. I calculated that we had 3.59 years before we completely run out of money and would be effectively bankrupt, probably sooner. Our little church of Borden is a lovely little church, and it is filled with a supportive and very generous congregation. Unfortunately, it is not filled with quite enough of them to be able to pay all the bills, and as the years go by, there seem to be fewer and fewer of us. We needed to do something. We needed to do something different, and we needed to do it fast. While reviewing the bank account frequently, which I do frequently, I discovered that one lady had been donating £5 per month for over 20 years and never comes to church. God bless that lady. It was this lady that gave us the idea for the Widows' Mite Fund. So the Widows' Mite Fund is a simple scheme, so simple, to ask as many people as possible to make just a small, regular monthly donation to Borden Church. And this is aimed primarily at people from outside our immediate church family or those who are not currently regular contributors. Mostly when we talk about finance, we talk about the diocese, we talk about the deaneries, the benefices and the parishes, which is about 5% of the population. The Widows' Mite Fund is aimed directly at the other 95%. The challenge was to increase our income without asking our existing congregation for any additional funds. 90% of those who are now donating are all new givers, although about half a dozen people from within our congregation have chosen to increase their giving, which is very kind and very generous and very helpful of them to do that. So how do we communicate with people? Well, we've got a parish magazine with a circulation of about 250. Last year we made an appeal via the magazine with a return envelope included. The initial response was good, and since then more people have offered their support. People are joining the Widows' Mite Fund. It's a constant trickle. We have a Facebook page which becomes more and more important as time goes by as a means of mass communication. If you don't have a Facebook page, you absolutely need one. Imagine if St Paul had had access to Facebook. He'd be pinging off letters here, there and everywhere. We speak to people in person, which is very important, to explain the Widows' Mite Fund and to explain the problems. I tell people the gruesome reality of what is at stake. Our priest, our church, our traditions, our history, and even our community, that are all united by the continued existence of our parish church. People say to me, but the church have got loads of money. And I say, yes. The church is asset rich, in much the same way as people who own their own houses are also asset rich, but it doesn't pay for the shopping at the end of the week, does it? Our plans for the future, we plan to keep in touch with the Widows' Mite Fund supporters as far as possible. Last Christmas we sent everybody a Christmas card and a letter thanking them for their support and explaining to them how their money was being spent. I give people my personal promise that we will spend their money wisely. We plan to send everybody a copy of our 2022 annual parish report. We'd like to organise a social event to get everybody together, but with COVID that's been difficult so far. We hope to create an environment where Borden Church is financially sustainable for the future, where people can come to church to make their peace with God and their neighbours and themselves without worrying about how to pay the bills. We hope to retain a spiritual presence at Borden Church for future generations, and with the help of God, we will. Thank you for listening. There's a little leaflet that some of you might have, and at the back it does have my telephone number. Now, just a thought, if you phone that telephone number, you'll likely get my husband, and he's not very good at taking messages. You also have my email address. If anybody has any questions, you can send me an email, and later on, I think if anyone has any questions, I think later there's opportunities you can ask anything that you want to know, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy, for sharing your idea and story with us. It's a real testimony to the generosity that we can experience when we reach out and declare our needs. It also reminds us of the importance of opening up honest conversations about money and not shying away from talking about our finances. There are many positive stories from around the diocese relating to financial generosity, of which I shall share some examples. One church in Maidstone Archdeaconry experienced a growth in the congregation in 2021, and as a result, it found itself with income over and above its anticipated budgeted income. They decided to give £5,000 shared between two other churches in the deanery who were of a different church tradition, and without this generosity, those churches may have struggled to pay their parish share. Another example of generosity is within Barron Downs, where both Addisham and Bishopsbourne are continuing to pay the same amount of parish share as in 2021, therefore allowing other parishes in the benefice to take a reduction for 2022. Added to this, the finance team have received indications from numerous parishes that they are prepared to give £1,000 more than their requested parish share amount in generosity to others in their deanery. My hope and prayer is that these stories of generosity will keep on coming. Our challenge is not to stay in our own little pockets of security, not to see extra money that comes in as a comfortable cushion, but instead to be thankful for it and prayerful in our discernment of where that money should go. We are called to be outward looking, and for some of us, that means only looking as far as our next door neighbour or within our local community. Another wonderful story of generosity is the story of the Whitstable Community Wardrobe, started by a team from churches across Whitstable and headed up by Jane Myhill, Children and Families Minister. This project is now into its 5th year with 700 Facebook followers. Last year, 282 local children benefited from the generosity of that project. The Community Wardrobe asks for uniform donations from the local community, with a number of collection points across the town, which are then emptied by volunteers. They wash the clothes and sort and store the contents. Requests for uniform are then received via Facebook or by phone, and open sessions for collection of the uniform take place in the school holidays, in churches and community centres across the town. The project has provided significant financial benefit to local families, with the average cost of each bag of uniform given to a child totalling around £50. And the generosity of this project does not just relate to the cost saving, but it also impacts the environment. In 2021, 1,410 items of clothing from Whitstable Community Wardrobe were recycled and reused rather than going to landfill. The cost of running this project is largely the cost of time, and the benefits extend beyond the financial and environmental to provide opportunities to interact with both schools and members of the community, allowing active, visible Christian witness, and providing further opportunities to offer and publicise other activities to the many families that engage with the project. Following on from the success of the Community Wardrobe came the launch of Whitstable Toys. Last year was the first full year of the project, and it distributed just over 7,000 children's books, toys, puzzles and games to families across the local community. As with the Community Wardrobe, it's all free, and it all happens because of the generosity of people. It follows a very similar model to the Community Wardrobe, and once again brings financial savings to families, environmental benefits in terms of reusing and recycling, and further opportunities to engage with the community. And I couldn't talk about school uniform and families without mentioning one of our amazing diocesan schools. Minster Primary School in Thanet have a team of Christian ambassadors whose faces you can see on the screen behind me. They wanted to respond generously to help support Ukrainian refugees, and they connected with the local charity and wrote to the school community and the local community to ask for medical supplies, hygiene products, sleeping bags, torches, and numerous other items that are needed. The school have been absolutely overwhelmed by the response. They are incredibly proud of their Christian ambassadors, and they have facilitated this outpouring of generosity from the local community. As I said at the beginning, there are so many stories I could mention here that are testament to the abundant generosity across our diocese. But all of these things exist because of people having the courage to ask, to seek, to knock, to push the door, and to see what happens, and to root it all in prayer. Generosity is the theme for our Keep Praying focus this year. You may have seen our diocesan Lent card based on the story of Zacchaeus and his transformation, resulting in his exuberant generosity. Our theme for Keep Praying Lent is Changed Lives, Generously Changing Lives. And if you haven't seen it, there is a Bible reflection each week in the calendar of prayer, looking at the story of someone who has had a life-changing encounter with God and who learnt something about generosity along the way. Lyndall and Primrose, our prayer network coordinators, have produced a series of images, prayers, and reflections. There's a video each week on the diocesan YouTube channel, and we've also launched a short daily prayer podcast which follows the calendar of prayer. In addition to all of this, the Communities and Partnerships team have set up a refugee prayer bank on the diocesan website, which offers a beautiful way to be generous in prayer. All of this is designed to encourage us to pray generously, to think prayerfully about what generosity means. It's not a one-way thing. It's about being able to give and to receive. And it's definitely not just about money. The Year of Living Generously launched in the autumn, and many people have signed up, but there is still time to do so. There are individual cards, mine are somewhere. There are individual cards to complete, which are on your tables. And there are ones to complete personally, but there are also cards to complete as a parish, benefice or deanery. Please do take some cards away with you and take the time to reflect prayerfully about how you can live out generosity. How can you live out that message of generosity in how you speak, how you listen, in what you do with your time, your money, or your skills? Living generously is fundamental to Christian living. So let's be inspired by the stories of celebration that we're hearing this morning. Let's persist in asking for and seeking what we need, and allow ourselves to be open to how God responds. Let's also commit to be on the lookout for the needs of those around us, so that our changed lives can generously change the lives of others. Thank you.